Hello and welcome to this feature spotlight video on the Unreal Engine. I'm Andrew Diebel, the product manager for Emulate 3D, and I'm excited to show you the new and improved rendering engine which comes with Emulate 3D 2025. This has advantages no matter your application. If you're making controls testing models, then you'll notice the smoothness of navigation, even when running physics-heavy models and connected to multiple controllers. If you're running simulation models, then you'll be impressed by the significantly reduced load on your CPU, allowing you to run models much faster with the graphics on or the graphics set to low. If you're making demonstrations, then you'll greatly appreciate the much higher quality renders and videos that you can create from within Emulate 3D directly, even at real time. For context here, I'm running quite a large model with a lot of shiny metal and detailed CAD. I'm using a laptop with a 2021 graphics card whilst recording my screen and without any challenges. Generally speaking, the default graphics settings look better and perform better in 2025 than they did before. And if we're comfortable changing those visualization settings, then the Unreal rendering engine can go prettier still or go faster, depending upon our goals. To do this, we'll want to choose the right preset display option or create our own. Let's look at each in turn. There are some preset display settings which we can really quickly toggle between using the bottom bar just here. Or we can look at in detail by going to the visualization tab on the ribbon and looking at the display section just here. We can edit these default settings and we can create our own as well. So let's have a look at a couple in turn. The movie display is going to be ramping up our graphics to maximum. So if we look at the graphics settings down in this bottom section of the display dialog, we can see that most of these settings are enabled, and we'll go through each of these in turn. The movie display also removes and hides certain elements of the user interface. For example, in the visibility section, we can see that the movie display is going to turn off the direction arrows that turn on conveyors when they're running. It's going to turn off the axes that we see in the corner and the view cube. It's just going to give us a cleaner view of our model without all of that clutter that's only useful when building our system. As a reminder, as well as the display settings, it's also really useful to set up a number of layers in your model. And you can use the new layer presets to toggle between a set of layer options that might be useful for building a model, showing, say, dimensions and feedback information, or ready for a movie. And similarly, we can set up camera angles as well, and we can toggle between these really quickly. So what is the movie display going to give us? Let's run the model so we can see something nice in the background. Under our graphics settings, we can see some new features that have been introduced with the Unreal rendering engine. Global illumination is going to give us really nice lighting when we have bold colors next to each other. It's going to simulate the effect of light bouncing off one object and transferring the color to the next. So if we go and look at this corner, you can see the red from one box is being transferred across to the white color of the next box. And it's subtle, but it does make a significant difference once we start having bold colors put together and when we start combining it with reflectivity. Because if we set up material properties like reflectivity and textures and even normal maps on our objects, we can get beautiful lighting effects if these reflections are enabled. And you can see this on the tire press in the background, especially if I start moving around. We can see the reflectivity over here on the shiny metal and over here on the control panel, which looks fantastic even as we move around the scene. This is all done dynamically as we move around. Going back to the movie settings, we can also see that ambient occlusion has been turned on in this movie display. Now, ambient occlusion is going to make dark spaces seem darker. Enclosed spaces will have less lighting and open spaces will seem brighter. And this gives us a sense of depth and color when we're looking at complex shapes, especially our CAD, which we might have imported. And then finally, we have this ray tracing option, which is going to give us beautiful shadows. We're going to be doing lots of calculations from our default lighting. We will be looking at how to set up custom lighting in the next video in this series. But the lighting that we do have set up will be creating lots of paths from light sources. It's going to be bouncing off different objects, and it's going to be producing these beautiful shadows that are crisp in the background itself. Now, when we're building our model, these lighting effects are going to get in the way. We don't want to see shadows and dark spaces. So instead, if we turn to the build display, we're going to have a much crisper and easier to use view for when we're doing our markup and positioning objects. The build display turns off a lot of these advanced lighting settings. It enables a lot of the user interface like our view cube and axis, and it also enables this global downlight. What this is going to do is turn off all of the lights that may be in your model. So by default, there's a light that comes in at an angle that gives you nice angled shadows. If you click this Enable Global Downlight button, it's going to turn off all the other lights and instead make a uniform light source coming straight down. And this is going to give us vertical shadows that will allow us to easily position objects in 3D space. It's great for aligning conveyors over on top of each other, for example, because we can see the shadows underneath them. We also can set a high exposure offset if we wanted to in our build setting. The exposure offset is going to change the contrast of our system. It's going to make things look brighter and lighter, although if we set it too high, it's going to make things look washed out. So a lower exposure offset makes things look really bold in their colors for a movie, and a higher exposure offset may be easier if you're creating CAD markup and you want to see things very clearly. We'll look at this in more detail when we look at lighting. Now, if we want to compromise between the two, we can use the default display setting. And this is what you'll see when you load Emulate 3D for the first time. The default display is a fantastic compromise. It's going to give us better performance than we saw on the old rendering engine, but it also looks significantly nicer. So this is kind of your day-to-day use, the default display. Now, the rendering has a significantly reduced impact on model run speed in Emulate 3D 2025 due to how we handle the threading and make more aggressive use of your graphics card. But say you're running on an older GPU, or you're running disconnected from mains power of the battery life of a laptop, or you just want to run a really large model with graphics still on, then we can use this high performance mode. High performance mode is going to turn everything off. You can see it looks significantly worse in terms of graphical quality, but we'll be able to achieve a higher frame rate. We can create our own custom display modes, and we can use this Add Setting button to create another one. And we'll use our high performance mode as a template to get us started. Now, I like the high performance mode, but I can't deal with the lack of anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing is smoothing the pixelated edges of objects. And we provide a number of different anti-aliasing algorithms which you can use. FXAA, or Fast Approximate Anti-Aliasing, is great for when you don't have ray tracing on. And Temporal Super Resolution, TSR, is great for when you do have ray tracing on. It's a more intelligent method which kind of blends previous frames with current frames to get a smooth result. I think anti-aliasing makes a real difference to how the model looks, and if we turn this on, you can see in our custom display mode that the edges are smoother and everything just looks a little bit nicer. It's not quite as raw as the high performance display. One final setting I might change on my custom display. I want some shadows, not those perfect ray trace shadows where I can see the gaps in between each of the rollers on my roller conveyor, but just some shadows behind the scenes. The higher quality I put on the shadow setting just here, the smoother they'll look. So if we put them on a high setting in the background, then there we get some block shadows over objects. I can quickly toggle some of these options using the buttons in the user interface here. One that might be useful is quickly toggling between the global downlight and then those volumetric 3D shadows with one button. And as always, we can turn on our physics view, turn off the graphics altogether, and finally, we might want to change our frame rate from a 60 frames per second to a lower frame rate, depending upon our goals. Now, if we really want to make the most out of the new Unreal rendering engine, we do need to set up custom materials and custom lights on our object. And this is going to be the focus of the next feature spotlight video in this series. We hope you find the new Unreal rendering updates useful and use them to make some fantastic and high performing models in Emulate 3D 2025.